Welcome to the model debate of Aoba Cup 2016. And first of all, we'd like to introduce the debaters of this model debate. So first of all, we have the Shuhei Funasugi as the Prime Minister, and he is the DJ of the Kansai 2016 and the 8th best team of Aoba Cup 2014. Right. And next, we have the Nana Chishima as the leader of opposition. She was the Malaysia Debate Open 2016 ESL Grand Finalist and the DJ of Germany Cup 2016. And next we have the Yohei Nakanishi as a member of government. He was the 2015 Germany Cup DCA and he got the one win of Aoba Cup 2013. And next we have the Keitaro Okahashi, and he was the DJ of Germany Cup 2014, and he was the semi-finalist of ESUJ 2014. So the motion for this round is this House to make voting mandatory. So first of all, we'd like to call upon the Prime Minister. Please open your case within 7 minutes. Here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really glad to propose this motion, and I'm really glad to talk about democracy today. This is because on July 10th is the election for upper house. So I'm really glad to propose this motion. In my speech, firstly, I can talk about why democracy requires full participation in voting. Second of all, as an analysis of context, in many countries, younger generation tend to vote much less than elderly, and why it's serious. I can make you sure at this point. Thirdly, I can talk about how after taking proposal, the marginalized people or younger generation people can reflect their own opinion through the democracy. I can talk these 3 points in my speech. Before moving to my first substantive, I'd like to set a model from 4 perspectives. 1, if the citizens don't go voting, we will impose some fine on these people. 2, of course, we are happy to welcome the early voting. If they have some business or they are busy on the voting day, they can vote another day. And third of all, the spoiled voting is allowed. That even if they, but we don't say that all people who do not voting now do this blank voting is not true. I think that this is because to some extent many people have incentive to care about the politics. I can talk about this point in detail in the second point. Fourthly, we are happy to encourage media to pour more information rather than status quo. This is simply because the necessity for information will be enhanced after the proposal. Based on this model, we can talk about the first issue. Why democracy requires full participation in voting? Simply, the legitimacy of the democracy depends on the scale of participation. This is because this democracy is ensured through only process. So through process, we can ensure the fairness between people. That's why we think that the people should participate. Rather participation to the democracy realizes the better democracy. This is because the purpose of the democracy is to maximize people's happiness in the first place, through reflecting as many people's opinion as possible. That's why we think that compulsory voting enhances legitimacy of the democracy. That's why we strongly propose this motion. This is the legitimate issues in the first place. Second of all, as analysis of today's context, in many countries, younger generation people tend to vote much less than elderly people. Why it's serious? First of all, the premise of this talking is that even though we give tons of education to the people in the school, they already understand why democracy exists and how democracy works. However, even in such occasion, why they do not vote. Firstly, as a matter of the paradox of voting, that for the national self-interested voters, the not going voting seems to be more rational rather than going to voting. This is because pivotal vote seems to be minuscule compared to any realistic estimate of the private individual benefit. For example, especially younger generation people have more incentive, more things to do in their daily life and more interesting and more things which they are interested in rather than elderly people. For example, watching TV on the voting day exceeds or over the subtle future economics or democracy for younger generation people. That's why we think that the laziness is being over the cost of voting, so they do not vote now. Second of all, the marginalized citizens, the people easily give up voting. They assume that other people also don't vote, so they abstain from voting in order not to consume or in order to conserve their limited resources. Even though these people, younger generation people, are in the most need of political representative, they do not vote. For example, younger generation, they don't think that, our voting will never reflect it in actual world of politics. As a result, they do not go voting. Third of all, as for the politicians, they cannot have incentive to care these people's benefits in today's context. The 2K of these people's, non-voting people's interest means a high possibility of losing. Therefore, they tend to care only voting people. For example, in the super-aged society, elderly people tend to occupy the majority of voters. As a result, politicians tend to care only pension system or health and leisure facilities in rural areas or like that. Even though the money is gathered from all nations, including younger generation and elderly generation, that they have to pay all same money. We think this is really serious from two reasons. First of all, younger generation people or marginal people cannot change by themselves. This is because the change gradually occurs. As a result, they have no power to change today's situation or say anything to the status quo problem. Second of all, even though they are younger generation, even though he is a younger generation, and one particular case, they have a really strong incentive to go voting. In such occasion, even though they have strong zeal with voting, their opinions are completely ignored under status quo. That's why we think that status quo situation is totally harmful and serious situation. Then, why we can solve this problem by taking this proposal? First of all, as for the politician, these people have the necessity to care about these today's non-voting people under the status quo in order to get votes from the citizens. So they care about these people. For example, they will show easier manifest, or they give us the policy which considers the benefit of or burden of the younger generation. As a result, we can achieve a better environment for both already voting people and younger generation people. Moreover, if they don't care about these people, it can be a gamble for them to win over the next election. That's why we think that the politicians care towards these people can be ensured. Second of all, in terms of nation, voters, they already have small interest, as I said in the introduction, thanks to because of education in the status quo. And then many people think that if I bother to go voting, I want to listen more or know more about the politics or like that. So for example, under the status quo, these people ignore the addresses in the town. However, after taking a proposal, next Sunday I have to go voting, so I like to listen to that politician's idea. In addition to this point, the politician already gave really more clear policies or manifests. As a result, they can realize more beneficial for each citizen's benefit, each citizen's interest, so we can achieve better situation for all nation and all citizen decision. That's why we strongly propose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for your remark. Next we directly follow from the leader of opposition. Please show the negative case to the executives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks for the financial announcements. I know when the voting date, but I still don't go because this is a legitimate choice to express my own identity. Because my political expression in the first place, Mr. Speaker, just stay at home and express my politics. I don't want to waste my precious time to go to the voting places because I don't want to opt into the current framework or something like that. This is also the valid choices and valid freedom, and that is why we are very happy. And it's totally against democracy. We're very happy to stand as opposition side. So I want to talk to you two things here. Firstly, why this proposal is totally against the democracy, and why this not to go to the voting places is legitimate choices. Secondly, after taking this proposal, why this event at the end of the day, this is more counterproductive for the young people. I'm going to explain to you one by one. So all matters are integrated in my speech. Firstly, why this proposal is totally against the democracy. I have two reasons here. Firstly, just stay at home is also the valid choices, Mr. Speaker. So what mindset that who don't want to go to the voting places is don't want to waste their own time to go to places just because the politics is not so important for themselves, or the politics is not beneficial for themselves or something like that. That is why they have 100%, they cannot trust politics. That is why they don't want to go as even the voting places in the first place. And this is also the valid choices, Mr. Speaker. And secondly, they don't want to opt into the current politics system, Mr. Speaker, because they just spoil their voting. It means that they trust the current politics system, and they have incentive to participate in the current framework. This is against their politics will, Mr. Speaker. That is why that is why these don't go to the voting places is very, very important in the first place. So what kind of democracy we are going to support you is we have to guarantee all people's political expression freedom, Mr. Speaker. And this kind of the fundamental right, it should be guaranteed by the government and should be not to force to enter to the election system in the first place. So moving on to argumentation, why this is after taking this proposal, at the end of the day, we cannot reflect the young people's voices and why this is totally counterproductive. I'm going to explain to you what kind of the characteristics of people who don't want to go to the voting in the first place, because we concede their characteristics, because they are lazy, because they don't care about the politics. That is why they don't want to go to the politics sphere. But after taking this proposal, they say that dramatically the status quo situation is changed. But why their incentives totally not? I'm going to explain to you. They have no incentive to learn new information about politics, or no incentive to commit to the politics itself. So I'm going to explain one by one. So firstly, they have no interest in the politics sphere because and they have no enough knowledge of what kind of party is this in the status quo, or they have too much doubt for the current politics system, Mr. Speaker, and And in that occasion, like they have several types of people, the young people. Firstly, they just focus on the TV media. For example, news they will announce to announce to you what kind of party is very in the status quo, popular or something like that. And they irrationally choose this kind of the party the day before voting. And also, and they notice, oh, tomorrow is a voting day, and without any thinking, they rush to vote their own voting rights in the voting places. And secondly, the driving the conversation with friends, especially their targets today's debate is the young people, and the young people is get a huge influence from your co-workers' conversation, Mr. Speaker. For example, your name is Abe, so you have to vote to the Abe politician or something like that. Just like they not think about the politics, just like they get an influence from the friends. That is why they irrationally choose this kind of people. And thirdly, the celebrities, Mr. Speaker. Also, the impact from the celebrities is also important. Like for them, like I love him. Just hear cool or like just hear like. Look like a representative of the country. That's why they try to go to the voting places. So what is the conclusion here is that they rush to the public without any thinking. And this is why it's so partial. I have two harm but reported.
Do you want to deprive voting rights from people with poor knowledge?
I don't think so. The poor people is also like have a legitimate choices, Mr. Speaker. Like today their models provide the education of poor people. Why you have a legitimacy to neglect the poor people voices in the first? I cannot understand your point. So moving on to the what kind of actual harm is occurred in terms of two levels. Firstly, increase the what the problem is what happened. So firstly, increase the blank voting, Mr. Speaker. Like because their benefit coming from their side of the house is they want to neglect the young people's voices. But still, they neglect to think about the voting. They want to write a name on just a paper. That is why the young people's voices is still not be reflected in the political sphere, Mr. Speaker. And secondly, they increase the randomly voting. Temporarily, they feel they choose such kind of the lazy people is not dramatically change their incentive towards the politics. That is why they rationally choose a temporary demand policy. For example, like you can get you can get money per month for you or something like that. And also they cannot focus on the long-term vision, Mr. Speaker. For example, the consumption tax, Mr. Speaker. They have to patient at this moment. But long-term vision, you have to do the consumption tax to solve the elderly people, to solve the future peoples. But they cannot patient this policy, and they try to like to choose this kind of short-term demand policy. And also they cannot think about a national security law, why this law is very important, and why this safety is very connected to your life. They cannot understand and try to latch to the very easy way. And that is why eventually they cannot, young people, neglect their voices. And moreover, this is totally harmful for the country's politics. That is why we are proud to oppose.
Thank you for your remark. Next, we directed for the member of government. Please continue your case within 7 minutes. Here, here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to do two things in my speech. Firstly, I rebut to the previous speaker, and secondly, I further analyze how this policy leads to better policy for all people. I explain one by one. Firstly, I rebut to the previous speaker. The previous speaker firstly argued, like, not going voting is one of the choice of the citizen. This kind of choice is quite important. However, firstly, like, we are also happy to make voting place, like more voting place. We can like we can cut the time of the voting, and we can decrease the burden of the individual. For example, only like they use 10 minutes in order to do voting. That is this kind of right is not important at the very beginning. And secondly, like some people want to show they oppose democratic system itself. However, we can get this message from blackboard even in our paradigm. That is why it's not so harmful. Over thirdly, please comparison. Their harm is only like 10 minutes, like their own lifetime. Our harm is like through long year, they suffer from like some bad policy. That is why on the comparative level, their harm is not important at the very beginning. And secondly, they argue like after passing this policy, like some people vote without consideration. That is why it's harmful. However, I have several rebuttals to this. Firstly, why in the status quo they don't have an interest about the politics? Because they don't need to go to politics. However, after passing this policy, of course they feel some responsibility because they have to go to voting. For example, if after passing this policy, if people don't have any information, how they vote, actually speaking, day before election, they watch the TV and they discuss like friends, and this kind of constellation if they do this kind of constellation, we think it's not problematic. But secondly, like politicians focus on these people after passing this policy because like they are swing voter, they are undecided voter. Like swing voter is quite important for politicians because it's difficult to change already decided person in the status quo. That is like they make policy for like young people, for example, using like the internet, using the SNS, they provide information for those kind of people. That is like after passing this policy, even these kind of people likely to get the information. And also, as we said, we are more than happy to provide information, increase the information using the media, and also like we are more than happy to provide like newspaper, like in company and in school, whatever so forth. That is why even after passing this policy, these kind of people, in some extent, they can consider about these kind of politics later. And thirdly, they argue like after passing this policy, like some politicians like make unreasonable, some politicians like for example unrealistic, unreasonable policy like because they can get the popularity after passing this policy because the citizens don't consider. However, even after passing this policy, of course, like these kind of politicians can pursue one-time election. However, they highly likely to lose next election if they make unreasonable policy, unrealistic policy. That is why politicians don't have enough incentive to make those kind of unreasonable policy. That is why we think the politicians don't do that, the people can consider. And moreover, fourthly, of course, we don't think all people consider deeply like using many days. However, even in the status quo, do you think all people can consider deeply using many days? Simply, it's not true. Even in the status quo, like many people only using information, like for example, through the like media, through the day before the election, the media, and they discuss the friends, only using this kind of information, even in the status quo. That is this kind of harm is not mutually exclusive. It's not valid reason to oppose this motion. Moreover, fifthly, like even if some people vote less consideration, in the first place we can't define what is good vote, what is bad vote. Because in the status quo, like some people vote by religious reasons. Some people, even in the status quo, because candidates are celebrities, they vote in the status quo. Because some politicians are good personality, some people vote that this kind of politician. Recognizing that we think this kind of idea is also in the status quo, it's valid. The opposition, if the quality is so important, opposition have to like deprive the vote from people with like less knowledge, and they have to give a vote based on test in their paradigm. That is why we think even though like in some extent less consideration by using information, for example, only discussion, it's also valid reason. It's also valid reason. It's not so harmful. And fifthly, lastly, like even if we concede, for example, famous reason is invalid, we are more than happy to prohibit the celebrity to run for the election. It's a problem of the like celebrity. It's not a problem of mandatory voting. That is why their harm it still doesn't stand in this debate. Next, secondly, this plan leads to better policy for all people. Before that.
You said that counter model to make young people to go to the voting, for example, media or something like that. but still in the status quo, they are lazy to not to go to the voting places. Why should we care this kind of lazy people?
As I said before, after passing this policy, that these kind of politicians like make some specific policy for these kind of people because they have to go to the policy after passing this policy. And next, I explain that this plan leads to better policy for all people. What is the problem we see in the status quo? Like some politicians make policy for only certain kind of people, such as religious community or like certain industry, because the politicians are elected organized vote from these kind of community. For example, in some region, like 40% people have religion or relate to certain industry. In status quo, like voting rate is, for example, 60%. If the politician care only religious community or industry, they can pursue the election by organized vote from these kind of people, even if they don't care less than 60%. Because simply non-organized vote is only 20% because low voting rate. However, in that kind of circumstance, like politicians have less incentive to make policy for all people. However, after passing this policy, the voting rate is nearly 100%. That is why the politicians cannot win only by organized vote, like, because less 60% people also vote after passing this policy. In that kind of circumstance, the politicians also have to care less 60%. That is why this policy incentivizes the politicians to make policy for all people. That is why we can decrease the power of this kind of organized vote. We can make better policy for all people. That is why we are extremely proud to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for your remark. Next, we'd like to call upon the member of opposition. Here.
So all you guys, I'm gonna talk about it in two levels in this debate. Number one, I want to finalize issues about whether one of the people who are not totally indifferent, who are totally indifferent, who suddenly change the mindset, who suddenly have motivation to know the information positively, right? I don't think so. A rational voter would not happen and be random voter, would rather crowd out the proper, legitimate, as they describe, democracy. And secondly, if there's time, I want to explain about let's talk about democracy. I believe there is no necessity and there is no rational reason to impose a duty, right, to go to the election, right? So let me know. And firstly, about crash point about whether they can change the mindset or that, including the rebuttals. First of all, you guys, right? They talked about they will be someone responsible, right? For example, one day before the election, they will learn that kind of information in the newspaper or internet or so on and so forth, right? But we are talking about so just because you talk about election with friends, right? Could you rationally calculate that information in the long term or short term? Can I compare? Well, I don't think so, right? Because there's no rational information about what's the proper effect of increasing the consumption tax or that kind of thing. We believe just one temporary idea is rather enforcing that they are rational, they misunderstand themselves are rational one. I think that is rather counterproductive in the first place. And secondly, more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, I believe they talked about in the next election they will lose if they pass unrational policy. But Mr. Speaker, I'm talking about, for example, the younger people who care about short-sighted money, from the government or that, right? In that case, I'm not talking about the party policy, just because we are using the money for myself or that kind of policy. We are not talking about. I'm talking about that kind of consumption tax or the long-term view. I think rather that kind of policy is a bit difficult to discuss. I think the media or that kind of power actor could not rationally criticize it properly. I believe that is because like we distribute the power to each individual to think on your own, and that power will not happen in their model. And thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, the religious reason or that kind of thing is like one valid reason to vote. But we are talking about just because they talk about probably knowledge people will not be applicable to that right to vote. But we are talking about just because a problem solution mismatch. We are pointing out problem solution mismatch, right? They talked about the younger age could reflect the idea, could reflect the policy that is suitable for the younger age. But the question is, less knowledge or less information and less responsible people vote randomly. Well, the question is why that kind of beneficial policy for the younger age would be passed. There is no guarantee at that moment. That is why that kind of policy for younger age they want to achieve will not be achieved in them even in their model, right? Then, so let's talk about democracy, because they illustrated or they try to compare my partner's argument is just 1 hour or 1 hour's movement or that kind of thing. But we are not talking about that kind of superficial practical harm, right? We are talking about what's the characteristics of democracy. We have to recognize it. Democracy is not the best form of choosing my representative, but it's a better way, right? So I mean democracy is a self-renewal machinery to improve, right? To improve the system. For example, two big party system is not suitable or suitable in some country, or that kind of updating the system itself is the key point of democracy, right? Democracy can on their own change themselves. That's the key factor or key aspect of democracy. But what they're talking about, what they are going to do is just forcing the people. They expand the people who want to oppose that current framework of policy, framework of politics, right? I believe democracy is one kind of way to expressing in their own way or on their way, right? So the way to so for example the ideas I don't want to go to politics or election just because I don't like this kind of framework of politics. I have to change that kind of framework. That idea could be totally expunged. The reason is thank you, sir. The reason is simple because they talked about blank vote can alternate that kind of idea or so on and so forth. But crucial failure is blank vote can't distinguish that kind of discrepancy, right? For example, some people who are not who are not interested in the policy would pay or put the blank voting, but some people who try to oppose that kind of voting, the policy itself will have to put blank voting. There is that strong discrepancy, but we can't notice that discrepancy. We have to recognize the importance to not to go to the election and not to even put the blank vote, right?
Do you think some people are happy only by going voting place?
Happy.
Some people get damaged only by going to voting place.
What do you mean by that?
You say some people don't want to go to voting place.
Yeah.
This kind of choice is quite important. Do you think some people get damaged only by going voting place?
Yeah, I'm talking about democracy system itself would be tarnished or against, right? I mean democratic means, undemocratic means can't justify democracy end, right? I believe ladies and gentlemen, they're talking about there's no harm to go to the election or that kind of that school or that to vote, but we are talking about just forcing itself is depriving the right of freedom to not to go to the election and to opt out from that kind of current framework of politics, right? That is why maybe if I have to say directly, maybe the harm is against democracy. So that is why I think it's unjust to force the people, and rather more than that, that policy for the younger age will not be achieved. That is why we brought for opposition bills.
Thank you for your remark. Next, we directly call upon the first speaker of the opposition side. Please conclude your case with a 10-minute.
have the politics expression, Mr. Speaker. They want to demonstrate. I don't trust your politics or boycott in the first place. And this is a strong will, and we have to, as a democracy, we have to guarantee, protect the politics expression in the first place. So today's government side burden of proof is why this kind of choice can be destroyed by the government, or why this proposal is totally against the democracy. Why it should have to force the people to opt into the current democracy and forcibly have to express their political opinion in the public sphere? They have to explain in the first place. So I'm going to talk to you two things here. Firstly, why young people's voices, whether or not the young people's voices is enough to reflect to the political sphere. Because their argument, the main case coming from their side of the house, is they want to protect the young people. They want to reflect the young people's opinions. And I'm going to examine whether or not they can neglect the voice or something like that. This is a very important flashpoint. Second level, the principle level, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, principle level. So, like they are talking about participation is very important. But on the other hand, our house is protect the freedom of the political expression. In these phrases, which democracy we should have to guarantee in the first place. And I'm going to explain to you one by one. Firstly, whether or not the young people's voices can be reflected under the political sphere or not. I have two responses here. Firstly, I'm going to point. Sorry, I'm not refute you about the exam. I'm not extend my opinion. So I mentioned in my point, I mentioned in my point, like the people, like why the young people's voices is so important, and why young people's voices, the future is very important in the first place. Because I mentioned to you, like even in the status quo, like we have a lot of countermotive for the young people, how the election is very important in the education sphere or like the advertisement sphere or like the media or something like it. But still they ignore this kind of announcement, but still neglect their to hear this kind of the information or cannot notice kind of the importance of politics. Why is so? Because they guarantee the current happiness and they don't want to focus on the future happiness or something like that. In that occasion, why the young people's voices is very important in the first place, I cannot understand anymore. And secondly, even young people's voices to some extent very important, but really they can be expressed their opinion in the first place. Because they mentioned to us, like, because they mentioned the politics, we to some extent concede politicians have changed the mindset and try to make a more like to some extent beneficial for the young people's policy. We concede this point, but the point here is we force the young people to opt into the political sphere. It means that such kind of the young people cannot. We already analyzed a very time, like they have like tomorrow you should have to go to the voting. Such kind of situation, and you have to go to this. You should go to the voting. In that occasion, the young people or like the lazy people have no incentive to change your mindset to like actually think about focus on the politics or something like that. Because the analysis coming from their side house is just feel responsibility. But feel responsibility, it doesn't mean to analyze a politics or to think about your future or something like that. That is why, like, the voter is to have no like enough rationality to focus on your good policy. For example, the politicians have an incentive to make a policy just a temporary beneficial for young people. In the future, the young people is destroyed. Such kind of cases also occur, Mr. Speaker. That is why this is not really like beneficial for the young people. Secondly, the principle level, as I told you, that their participation is for young people, and this have actual benefit coming from their side of the house. But I cannot hear any importance or benefit coming from their side. But on the other hand, our side actually, such kind of people don't want to go to the voting places is harmful, and also like irrationally voting is increased, and it's cannot be the beneficial for young people at the end of the day. That's what I'm very proud of us.
Thank you for your remark. Next, we would like to call upon the different speaker of the government side. Please conclude your case within 4 minutes. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The uniqueness or unique core point of democracy is not require all people to choose the correct answer. This is because people's value differ from person to person. That's why, rather than choosing the true answer, according to the opposition side, they try to pursue what is true answer for the current situation. However, there is no true answer in this democratic country. Therefore, we strongly support this motion by ensuring the process of the decision making. We can achieve the better situation for all people's happiness. In terms of ensuring the process, our side is totally better. So, in this way, we won this debate. So, in order to make you sure that our side won this debate, I'm gonna tell you 2 criteria for this point. Firstly, the practical consequences. What is the pragmatic consequence of each side? Let's compare one by one. Second of all, I can talk about philosophical level issues. The opponent side try to protect freedom of choice, freedom of expression, many philosophical stuff. However, we consistently say that democracy should be achieved through all participation. This is because, as I said, the democratic value depends on the people's difference in this society. Let's examine them one by one. As for the practical consequences, our side repeating say the young people's opinion are not reflected at all compared to elderly people. However, we don't say that these people's opinion are, in the end of the day, can be completely reflected. It's not our burden. This is because what we want to do is that to arrange a condition for fair battle among the elderly people and younger generation people. Under the status quo, the younger generation people have to decide by themselves where under the situation where the already elderly people or previous generation people set. That's why we think that our side just giving the better condition rather than status quo. The opposition side tried to say that random choosing will occur or like that. However, there's no uniqueness at all, right? According to as my partner Clay said that, even under the status quo, many people vote for one guy just because the one person did adultery in the past, or they did some really immoral things in the past. Such kind of issue can be a good criteria is the uniqueness of the democracy. This is because the value or judgment, the criteria for judging differ from person to person. So we think that we cannot say this is the clearly true or just thing in this society. That's why we think that rather than that, we can comparatively give a better condition for the citizen. For example, for the people who, because of the laziness, because of the uniqueness of the human nature, they tend to give up. As I said, watching TV exceeds rather than the cost of going voting can have a more chance rather than status quo. This is a good point of our side. The opposition side, like the random voting or like that, is in the first place not so important. And even if such kind of stuff occur, even young generation can understand, oh, my country goes bankrupt. Such kind of really clear stuff can be ensured. That's why we think that even that such kind of extremely harmful case can occur, we can mitigate such kind of problem. As my partner and I said, because of the election, again, repeating election of repeatedly being elected in the next election. That's why we think that as for the practical level, our side is comparatively better. As for the philosophical level, they consistently say that expression is necessary or like that. However, as I said in the model, we need the blank board. When you think about the blank board, the necessary point is that the viewpoint of the politician can differ, not the younger generation. Politicians have potentially have a risk to be lost because of that all people can be vote for some other politician. That's why we think that in terms of expression, we can have no valid meaning. Rather than that, as I said in the interaction and consistently, the different value should be respected. However, the choice or like that can be mitigated through the process of judicial system or like that. That's why we think that their side cases is not so important. Our side won from philosophical level and practical level. That's why we won. Thank you.